The title of this video may sound a bit strange, especially because my last video was a video game review. But what I mean is that I don't look at video game reviews from traditional gaming journalism outlets, or whatever you want to call them. IGN, Polygon, GameSpot, Kotaku, whatever. I'm not saying that these sites are necessarily all filled with rubbish journalists. In fact, I thought IGN's recent Dead or Alive 6 review was pretty decent and fair enough. But there's a lot of things that are a real turn-off for me. I'm going to go over those complaints first, and then I'll let you know what I do instead of reading game reviews. Some of those things I'm sure you already do yourself, and are also quite obvious, but a few others are possibly not something you've considered yet. The point of this video is basically to rant a little bit about video game reviews, as well as discuss a few topics that have been on my mind, but can't quite make full videos on. But hopefully you'll enjoy it nonetheless. The first thing I don't like about conventional game reviews is the format. I don't like the idea of summing up a video game with a number. Let's take a look at The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. There are things you could complain about, like the lack of music at times, areas of emptiness, really fragile weapons, and so on and so forth. Yet a lot of the scores are perfect. 5 stars, 10 out of 10, 40 out of 40. Obviously the reviewers found the game incredible, and some issues they had with the game were transcended by all the things it did right. But everyone's different, and in turn has their own priority of what aspects of a video game are important to them. So for people who really dislike certain aspects of Breath of the Wild, these perfect scores don't really make any sense. The reason these scores exist is because people don't want to read reviews, basically. But what good does it do when you need to read the thing to understand the context of why the particular score was given? That makes the score useless. A list of bullet points at the end, which to be fair is usually standard practice, are much more helpful than some number. Basically what I'm saying is that reviewers should present games as best as their abilities can, and approach games from a variety of different angles in order to provide helpful information to a wide variety of potential buyers. And even if a reviewer doesn't manage to do that, a genuine effort will usually be recognized by the reader. The second thing that really bothers me is when they get the wrong people to review certain games. I don't know about you, but I don't think reviewing a type of game I really dislike is going to result in a well-done review. I'd probably miss a bunch of stuff an enthusiast would be really interested in. I've got 2 example categories myself, the first being racing sims, and the second being Japanese niche games, usually with a bunch of fan service. When it comes to racing games, I'm usually into full racing sim kind of stuff. No traction control or any kind of driving aids. I don't care about those green, yellow, and red things that tell me what line to take. What I want to know is how close to real life these games are. Racing sim enthusiasts and racing drivers are going to be the only people I would trust. A game reviewer who's a novice driver isn't going to be much use, as they don't have the skill level to determine whether something handles realistically or not. No matter how much they misinterpret their lack of skill level as realistic handling. And it's not just handling, it's other stuff too. Because there's certain things people want to do in racing sims, which may not be immediately obvious to somebody who's really into that subject. An enthusiast in the genre will be able to give detailed information other enthusiasts want, but at the same time, they can still be able to convey what a beginner or a novice driver would like to know. There are a number of racing sims that do this scaling of skill level very well, so you need someone with those kind of specialist skills to properly evaluate that entire difficulty scale for these games. In the racing sim world, a regular game reviewer should just stick to reviewing arcade racers. Like Gran Turismo, oh, shots fired. Don't worry, I'm just kidding, for the most part. Japanese niche games with fan service often get terrible reviews, and again, it's because they didn't get the right person to do the review. There's so many examples of bad anime game reviews. The thing is, a lot of times the person reviewing these games just goes on and on about the fan service. It's like, yes, I know there's fan service, which you may find weird, but please don't dedicate an entire review of how seeing boobs jiggle on a screen is something you can't handle. And worse is when they start preaching. I don't see first-person shooter reviews where the reviewer can't stop talking about gun violence or gun control laws. A reviewer is supposed to present useful information to anyone who might be interested in the game, not get hung up on one topic. I could go on and on ranting about this stuff, but I think I already talked enough about what I don't like with many game review sites. let's talk about what I do instead of reading reviews. Looking for gameplay footage on YouTube is pretty common, and I think almost everyone does that anyways. Sometimes you can find people specializing in certain genres, which is very helpful. The format doesn't even have to be a review to be useful. A lot of YouTubers who are more focused on entertainment rather than reviewing usually also do a good job of conveying what a game is like to play. Hitting up Twitch and catching some streams is a pretty decent idea as well. Publishers like to stream the games that they're about to or have just released. This makes sense for more obscure games because developers can show off what the games are like and directly communicate with their target demographic, especially if their games often end up getting less than stellar reviews. Reading comment sections and user reviews aren't a super great alternative to well-written reviews, but often you can easily spot patterns with those kind of comments. Like if the game is suffering with bugs, or if certain elements or gameplay functions have some sort of glaring flaws about them, if everybody starts commenting about those, then, well, you know there's an issue. A lot of times, you just have to try games for yourself, though. In that case, demos are your best friend. There are so many games I ended up getting for real because of a demo. Commandos, Valkyria Chronicles, Driver, various 90s FIFA and NHL games, Racing Simulation 2, Need for Speed Porsche. I could go on and on. That list is almost endless. Back in the day, you'd get demos, and patches for that matter, from CDs included in magazines. That's how it was for computer games, but I'm pretty sure things were similar with CD-based consoles, minus the patches, of course. Actually, now that I'm thinking about demos, when I first bought my PS3, I didn't get any games for it. I think I had some ordered off of Amazon that just didn't arrive yet, so I downloaded a bunch of demos to pass the time. That's actually how I ended up finding out about Valkyria Chronicles. But demos are not the norm. So for a lot of games, there just is no option to try it out in a demo format. If you have PlayStation Plus, I know you can do timed trials, which I don't like all that much. I always think about the time limit when playing. I can't remember how much time you get though. I had a look at Xbox Live Gold, and it doesn't look like there are any trials, but maybe I just missed it. I wouldn't go out of my way to get a membership just to try some games, but if you have it, might as well make use of it. Something I've been doing in the last few years, which some people might not have even considered, is checking out my local library to see what they have. Libraries aren't just about the written word. CDs and videos have been available in libraries for a long time, and video games are pretty common as well now. My local library's selection is a bit all over the place. There's no real pattern on what new releases they'll get, but it's free. Every library is different, but I think it's worth investigating what your local library has got going on. Library cards are usually free for locals, and My Place allows you to borrow games for a week. If someone already borrowed something I'm interested in, I can just request it. Once it's brought back, the library puts it aside for me to pick up. Overall, I think it's a pretty good thing. I think whoever selects the inventory at My Place is a bit of an anime fan, as I do notice the occasional JRPG here and there, which is great for me. In fact, I think the first time I ever played Fairy Fencer F was when I borrowed the PS3 version when it came out. Oddly enough, they don't have any Neptunia games. Perhaps they find the cover images too dodgy, who knows. There's current and last gen games available, so I'm not just restricted to whatever's newest, but also games I might have missed out on the first time round. As a PC gamer, I also make use of Steam or GOG sales. For games that aren't super new or aren't AAA titles, you can usually find some good deals during holiday sales and things of that sort. I like to think of it this way: even if I didn't like the game all that much, a $10 game probably entertained me to some extent in the 2 or 3 hours I've played it. And anything cheaper than that isn't much to spend on a game you want to try out. The next one might sound obvious, but you can also rent games. I actually don't do this, but I think it's worth mentioning because I want to see how people feel about renting games these days. Depending what country and what part of that country you live in, rental services may or may not be available or convenient. Obviously, brick-and-mortar rental places are much less common than before, but I guess bigger cities probably still have some around. There used to be a Rogers video rental place with a decent selection of games that was really close to my house. Unfortunately, they packed up a long time ago. But there are a number of services in the US and Canada that work in the classic pre-streaming Netflix style. You pay a monthly fee and get sent a set amount of games each month through the mail. with you, of course, selecting which games you want. That seems to work out really well for certain people, but personally I don't think it'd be all that worth it for me since there's only a few games a year that I'm unsure about, or console games at least. I have no idea what these services are like since I don't use them, but I know one subscriber is or has been using GameFly here. I think GameFly is pretty well known. In Canada, I know there's a service called Game Access, but I don't know anyone who's used it. Let me know what you think of these services and if they sound useful to you. And now we come to an interesting subject: subscriptions. I really don't like subscriptions. I want to own the things I buy. The downfall of physical PC games I find absolutely detrimental. At least GOG, despite being a digital distribution platform, allows me to back up games I bought from them. And while I have some beef with Steam, it should be noted that at least DRM isn't a requirement, and they do sell DRM-free games. Even though subscriptions go against my principles, it is still an option when it comes to trying out games for yourself. And one that caught my attention recently is Origin Access. Yes, EA, the evil that plagues game industry. Basic membership is $30 a year, or $4.99 a month, and you can cancel anytime. Presumably that's US dollars, by the way. With that, you get a whole bunch of games to play, though not all DLC come with it unless you get the pricier Premier plan. But look at what you get. Just spend $4.99 and you get to try out a bunch of games for a month. Obviously, for people who have a lot of these games, that's a bit useless, but I myself am interested in a bunch of EA games. Dragon Age Inquisition, Battlefield 5, The Sims 4, Cities Skyline are just a few games I want to play or at least try. At this point, some of you might be thinking, how is this comparable or a replacement to game reviews? But isn't that what's been happening with movies and shows now? People first read and watched movie reviews on newspapers or on the TV, then renting became a thing, and now people just subscribe to Netflix or Amazon Prime and try out some movies and shows to find out what they like. I can see the same thing possibly happening to video games. There are other subscription services too, but I don't think they're as prevalent as Origin Access, except for maybe Utomic, possibly. I don't know, I don't like the idea of subscriptions, but I think I might spend the $30 a year. If you see a bunch of footage of EA games in this video, you know what happened. This whole topic of bad video game reviews and how people find different ways of evaluating a game they're interested in is something that's, for some reason, I'm a bit fascinated with, and I'd like to hear what your comments about it are. I hope you found that interesting. Remember to like the video if you did. That really helps out here on YouTube. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.